Are you recording right now?
Yeah, it's recording. The reality is, like, we sold our company because the company was fucked.
Yeah.
We're out of money. This is why you really sell your company. You made something good, and then you're not growing, you can't raise more money, the company's gonna die.
Yeah, but sadly, what's happening is you always get approached when your company is growing, doing super well, and you don't really need anybody, and that's the time that's probably the best time to sell.
That's the classic problem.
That's the conundrum. It's okay though. This video is to help you figure out how to actually get it done.
And remember, companies are not sold, they're bought.
Welcome back, guys. This week on our channel, we're talking with my partner Andrew Lee. We're talking about M&A. How do you actually get your company sold for millions of dollars?
And not make millions of mistakes in the process.
My startup, Posterous, got sold for $20 million to Twitter.
And my startup, JamLegend, was bought by Zynga prior to the IPO, and returned money to investors, and then we made money in the IPO, actually.
Same here. I think it's safe to say I'm pretty happy about the exit that we got. It wasn't quite what I hoped for. I really wanted to make something for 1 billion people, and we didn't quite make it, but on the flip side, our employees made money, our investors made money, and we learned a lot about this craft of making startups.
Yeah, and I think as we've seen more with our portfolio, we've seen a number of different types of acquisitions, not just the ones that we experienced, but all types of different acquisitions. And I think that our founders have asked us a lot of questions, and we keep on giving the same advice, so we thought we'd share it with the rest of the community. What are the types of acquisitions, right? What are the types of acquisitions that we see? What are the ones that pay more? What are the ones that pay less? So I think there are 3 types. The 3 types are pretty easy, and these are in order of I would say highest purchase price down to lowest purchase price. So the first type is called the strategic threat. So what that is a company is their existence and their mode of work is a threat to an incumbent within the market. A good example of this was when YouTube was bought by Google for like $1 billion.
Hi YouTube, this is Chad and Steve. We're the co-founders of the site, and we just want to say thank you. Today we have some exciting news for you. We've been acquired by Google.
So Viacom was also in the running for that, and Viacom saw YouTube actually as a real threat to its business. They couldn't sell cable subscriptions. It would change the way their advertising business works, because now people could easily be able to get personalized video delivered to them via the internet. So that's a strategic threat, something that fundamentally changes how industries evolve. So most of the companies that we work with are companies that we believe can change industries. So we want them to be strategic threats because that means that they will be bought, or better yet is they IPO and they just crush their competition. The second type is what we call revenue generating. A good example of this might be when Guitar Hero was bought by Activision for about $100 million. The CEO at the time knew that if he threw in a bunch of marketing into Guitar Hero, he would make more money than the actual purchase price. So that is a very simple one, which is basically I'm buying this company in order to generate more than I paid. And the last type is what we call team and talent acquisition. There's something that is focused on the tech or within the team, and the company wants to purchase that because it's going to help them either strategically, it's going to help them add more engineers, for example. One example of that would be when Salesforce bought Quip. They really wanted the tech and talent of Brett, who was formerly the CTO of Facebook. But in addition to that, there was some technology built there, and Quip was pretty useful as Salesforce starts to think about what are the other offerings that they want to have as an enterprise company.
It really is some bigger company that has something to protect, sometimes a moat or a new business line that they really want to own. That's the moment when they decide to go out and buy a company.
The old adage, I think, rings true that companies are bought, they're not sold. When your startup was about to sell, what was the sort of market landscape? What was the situation at the time?
For Posterous, the crazy thing was that we had been growing really, really fast for 2 years straight, and then we stopped growing when Instagram came out.
Oh, interesting.
So we grew very quickly off of a totally new technology, a new platform, and a new set of behaviors. And when Instagram came along, it actually flatlined our growth. Apps had not really been rolled out yet. There's sort of primitive iOS apps. The best photo sharing apps had not really started yet. The easiest way to get photos off of your phone was actually to email.
What do you think were the hopes and fears of the company at the time?
So at the time, we had to figure out how to pivot. Like, we knew we had a committed user base. We knew we had made something that millions of people were using. At the time, the company chose to become private group sharing, and that's actually when I left to go work at Y Combinator. If you don't have some other network to grow off of, there wasn't going to be that virality. How about for you? When did you decide to sell JamLegend?
So, effectively, what was happening was we had started doing a lot of social games. We were really wedded to the world of music games, and I sometimes wonder if we had not been wedded to music games, whether we could have just built a social gaming company and had it become, the next Zynga or any of our other friends' companies like Caban.
You could have kept making new games.
That's right.
But you had the initial game first.
That's right. At the time, Zynga had started doing what they like to call fast follows. What they would do is they would find a game, it was rising up in the charts, and they would just immediately copy the company. And they would copy the game, split it out in like a month or two, and then and they were doing pretty well as a result of that. And we saw them basically gobbling up a lot of talent. We thought that was a big change that was happening within the market at the time.
Was it a growth thing? I mean, for Posterous, it was definitely crazy, outrageous growth to top 200 on the internet anyway. Mm-hmm. And suddenly it stopped, and that's how we knew that we weren't continuing to scale product market fit.
Yeah, I think it was similar to us. We grew virally quite a lot. We're like CNET Webware like 100. We were in the Alexa 100. It was.
I mean, that's a big feat. Top 100 is really impressive.
Yeah, there's nothing more powerful than having viral growth. Viral growth just on its own is just a sight to behold. Yeah, we started flatlining. We could make bigger and better social games, but at the time, the cost of production was starting to increase. So unless we raised another round of funding at a significant clip, we would be competing against a huge number of other gaming companies. And this was hard. I mean, I think this decision is really hard. When you're sitting down, we had these couch moments where we'd sit down on our couch, and then we'd talk amongst the co-founders and ask, hey, is this worth it? What do we want to do? Do we want to have an independent company? Well, I want to,
It's a serious moment.
Yeah, do well financially. Yeah. Or is it that, we just want to be surrounded by really smart people? Do we want to IPO? And I think the thing is, the choice was never to take an offer, because there wasn't one in front of us. The choice really was, do we want to potentially talk to people who've asked us, who wanted to potentially acquire us? So we did everything. We actually met with a couple different companies, a number in Seattle. We met with all the big companies. We got offers from a number of them. And eventually we ended up at Zynga because I think it fit correctly with our contours of things that we cared about. We wanted everyone at the team to have a place. We wanted to make sure that our investors got something. We wanted to make sure that our team was taken care of, because we were just, we've been working pretty hard for the past couple of years. And we wanted to see the opportunity to grow ourselves and potentially have a payout. And I think a lot of people who were bought by Zynga had the same thing. The IPO was coming along, and it was imminent, right? It was like basically in a year or two, a year and a half, the IPO would just happen. When should they even be having these types of conversations, right? They raise money from us, they raise money from the Series A, their Series B, even their Series C, right? At what point should they even be doing this assessment?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really, sort of personal question, right? Mm-hmm. I can only tell you what I would do if I were the founder. The magnitude of outcome that can happen when you have product market fit and you have a clear path to building something really great is just so obvious and so tantalizing that that's always my plan A. It's so hard for founders to even get to product market fit that if you don't have product market fit yet, you don't have anything to sell. Basically have the team that you built and that's it. And so that's purely acqui-hire territory. And the reality is you can just go get jobs at these big tech companies. Like if that's what you want, just go do that instead. Early on, pre-Series A, it's almost always exactly the right thing to just focus on product and market and getting your product out there. And then the only time I would really start thinking about it is if I'm managing risk. Every time you need to raise when you are not default alive, and I'm going to link in the description to Paul Graham's essay about being default alive or default dead. If you are not default alive, the future of your company is not in your hands, right? And that's okay, right? Like you're trading off growth for safety. At every sort of journey from this, from the pre-seed to seed, from seed to A, from Series A to Series B, you will have built product, you have built a set of customers, you've built recurring revenue, sometimes with negative churn, which would be great. All of these things are really powerful, real aspects. And at any given point, those things, whether it's your team or your product or the customer base that you've built, is valuable to someone else. And so if you're looking down the road and you think you're gonna run out of gas before you get to the next gas station, or the gas station might be closed for you, that's when you need to think about M&A, because you need to take care of your employees, you should take care of your investors, you should take care of yourselves, right? Like as founders, you own so much of this business. It's okay to sell your business along the way, actually.
And it's such a personal decision, and it hurts. I think everybody needs to recover from that. There's this whole point of this, like you feel like a fraud, where you lose confidence because you set out to do this one thing, but you're not even there. You're like midway through.
Right.
And I think that's probably one of the difficult problems, is that great entrepreneurs are able to stare into the abyss, and the abyss will stare back, and you just have to not fall in. What we do at Initialized is we use a 4-step question process that we took from Atul Gawande from his book Being Mortal. It actually is usually used in counseling around end-of-life care. Similarly, one asks the same questions when they're dealing with a startup. So in this case, we ask really 4 sets of questions. The first one is, what is your understanding of the situation and its potential impact? That means understanding what your runway is like, what does the market landscape look like, all of those different factors. The second question we ask here, what are your hopes and fears? And the reason why we ask about hopes and fears is you're a combination of people, and founders themselves have hopes and dreams they want for their company. It might turn out that the thing that you want to do is still continue pursuing your vision, but because the market has changed, it makes sense for you to team up with someone else. The third question we ask is, what are the trade-offs that you're willing to make and not make? Again, what are the trade-offs that you're willing to make and not make? And that's a tough one, because for a lot of folks, they care about certain things, whether it's, I care about my salary, or I care about what I'm doing, or I care about the people that I'm surrounded with, or it's not just the people that I'm surrounded with, they just don't ever want to move to North Dakota. Nothing against North Dakota, great people there. Those are questions that we need to help answer to understand the contours of what it means to go and do an M&A. And the last, and probably most important question is, then what is the course of action given this understanding? And that helps us then formulate a plan. So with those 4 questions, that's how we dive in, and more importantly, should help you evaluate whether you want to go ahead and sell and what you want to do with your company. For a lot of folks, the first place to go and start is level setting where your situation is. So in that case, what that means is knowing things like your metrics, your annual recurring revenue rate, your runway, your burn, debt that you might have. This turns out to actually be a really big issue. Another one is talking amongst your co-founders to figure out what is the situation amongst the co-founders and the leadership. Are there certain people who are brilliant assholes who you're just like, oh, this engineer is really, really important for the product and we need to keep them, but honestly everybody hates working with them.
That happens.
Yeah, and that can kill companies.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen sometimes that happen as well, where somebody holds up a deal because that person isn't on board. We're trying to understand sort of what's the employee temperature, especially if you're going to be aiming for like the talent and tech side. You need to get a sense as to whether your company, your employees are sort of in on that. So if you've decided that based on your runway, your hopes and fears, we've already talked about the trade-offs, you want to go ahead and sell, there are many different ways to do that, but here are a couple key things that would be very helpful. One is start strategic partnerships, especially if you're an enterprise company. It's very hard to sell yourself to a larger company if they have no idea who you are and they can't tell the difference between you and Adam. You need to build trust with some of these other companies, and the best way to do that is to make them be one of your customers or potentially a very good partner. The best way to go and get an in is never to go through the corporate development department, no matter how much we love those folks. It's usually actually go through whoever runs the line item budget or whoever runs that particular team. That person is the number one person that you should talk to because they're probably the key champion that you're gonna have who's gonna help you fight against the decision makers who may not want to go and purchase the company. And probably the two other things that are really important that we don't talk enough about is if you know that you're going to sell and you need to extend runway, it's now time to go and increase your sales, pull forward some of that revenue. And on the other side, instead of just increasing revenue, it's also decreasing burn. So that means decreasing your costs. This might be a hard time, but you might need to go and lay off some folks. It's not great, but if you're gonna cut quickly, cut deeply, and be able to put yourself in a good situation to either pivot yourself out of the situation that you're in, or potentially be able to find yourself in an area where you can extend runway and get more customers, so you're in a good position to sell. When it comes down to talent and tech acquisitions, many times they'll want to go and interview your employees. You want to go ahead and first do interviews with your leadership, then do interviews with your employees afterwards when there's significant and true offers on the table. Many times it is highly disruptive to your team. You might be in the middle of a pivot, you might be working on things, and it's kind of scary to an employee. They're not a founder. When they start seeing that they're interviewing in another company, they get kind of scared because if it doesn't happen, it really hurts them quite a bit because they're not the founder. They are not built to deal with this type of risk. When you are talking to an acquiring company, you should talk to them about two different things. One, get a sense as to who are the previous acquisitions, the previous acquiring acquisitions that they've done, and who are those companies, and what are the contours of those deals. Ask to speak to some of those previous founders or CEOs or whoever executed on the deal. And number two, while you're doing this in parallel, have a best alternative to a negotiated agreement, your BATNA, if you will. That includes raising money, like doing a fundraise at the same time. That includes increasing revenue and decreasing costs. And then also think about potentially having more competing offers from other acquirers. So Gary, we've seen a lot of folks, not just in our portfolio, but generally our friends within the ecosystem. What is the number one thing that really seems to just kill deals? Like they're about to sign or they're very close.
For M&A, it's almost always people treating their M&A process like another fundraising process.
Oh, interesting.
So, corp dev and VCs are very different. Their motivations are very different. In the end, it comes back to principal agent problem. What will get a junior VC at a VC firm promoted is different than what will get a corp dev person at a big firm of any sort promoted. And so, corp dev is about not paying too much. It's about fighting for the deal, they want to get the deal done, but not at any price, right? Whereas VCs often have extreme groupthink, and so the more bidders there are, the more rabid they are to win the deal at any cost, especially if there's a 100x on the other end.
Right.
None of that dynamic occurs at the M&A corp dev level. And then the only other thing is the best alternative to negotiated agreement, always keeping that in mind, because if you don't have that, actually we've seen corp dev be extremely unscrupulous around that, right? It's like deals fall through, always maintain some sort of BATNA. Their entire job is to bring the price of the deal down.
But there's an amount that they're allowed to pay, and then if they can get that below that, there's actually bonus that's given to them to a certain extent. And it's funny because I remember one of my angel investors in my previous company over at JamLegend, he was the right hand to Barry Diller over at IAC, and he would say it was very funny how the two deals that would go really well were ones that were very small, because it was like, oh, we don't really care. This is,
it's all upside.
It's all upside.
Yeah.
And then the ones that were really, really, really big because those ones were existential strategic threats.
So I think that that's one of the best things about tech startups is that as long as you build something valuable, even if it doesn't work out exactly to plan, there's still a way forward, and a way forward that allows you to take care of all the people around you.
I hope it helps, and more importantly is we wish you the best of luck as you go through your M&A process and sell your company for millions.